Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Thriving in Motherhood podcast. Today, I am here again with Madeline Casey. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here with you.
It has been so long. You have come onto the Thriving in Motherhood podcast a couple of times. We did the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People series. We did another series. What else did we do?
We have that episode where we talked with about friendship. So that
Yes,
wasn't me, but
that's
yeah,
right. We did a
so
friendship one, and then we did another one about maybe
that's true.
exploring.
Did we talk about essentialism together?
Yes, we talked about essentialism together. That's what it was. I knew we did 2 different books.
Yes.
So I'm bringing the person that I talk about books with to talk about
Yes.
book clubs, which is really fun. So Madeline and another friend, Phoebe of ours, who's also been on the podcast and was also on the friendship episode, had been running a book club for, are we finishing our 4th year?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been doing a monthly book club for 4 years together. And I would say this has been one of the most transformational experiences and groups that I've ever been a part of in my entire life.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think we've really created something special that's hard to find. So,
It is. So that's why we're going to bring you the mastermind behind how to create one. Because I've had quite a few people ask me about this book club that I'm a part of, and this is one of those amazing things where I don't know all the inner workings of it. I just know how amazing it has been to be part of it. And so I've got a long list of questions here that have been submitted to ask you about the inner workings of developing not just a good book club, but a superb transformational book club that really unites people, even with completely different backgrounds, thoughts, opinions, ideas, uh, and ways of thinking.
Hi, I'm Jessica Jackson, and this is the new way to thrive in motherhood by leaning into who you are, what you love, your unique family situation, and personal mission to create a life that you actually want to live. I want to invite you to join me in saying no to the life of the exhausted supermom, burnout, victim thinking, being pulled in so many directions, suffering through survival mode, or being lost in motherhood, and say yes to building strong families and moving forward on our greatest goals in order to create a fulfilling life that we are excited to wake up to each day and become a soaring mother. This is the Thriving in Motherhood podcast. I want to invite you to watch this free training, Plan a Week You Can Win Without Getting Caught in Endless To-Dos, being a slave to your planner, or frustrated with your kids for interrupting your plans. In this training, we cover the real purpose of a planner and creating weeks you can win, and it has nothing to do with time management, how to create days that are full of meaning and purpose, 5 mistakes mom make that create losing weeks and what to do instead, plus the most important factor in being consistent in planning as a mom so you can enjoy your family and do the things that you need and want to do. And you can watch this right now. Just go to pages.thrivinginmotherhoodpodcast.com/win or click the link below.
So let's start practical. How do you pick? Actually, first, how about you describe what the deep dive book club is? Because this might not be the right book club for everybody, but it's a very particular style of book club.
yes. So we're very, very intentional with this book club. So, I guess a little bit of background is, um, in 2020, when the world was just a little bit crazy, I was talking to Phoebe and we were just talking about how hard it was to have conversations with people about all of these trickier topics that were being brought up and just how like it would be so nice to have people to talk to but you're just like so afraid of bringing up those conversations and like hurting people's feelings or starting a fight or when all you really want to do is kind of sort through your own feelings and like figure out what you where you stand on things. And so Phoebe, I'm pretty sure it was Phoebe, had the idea to do a book club. So we came up with it together, and our idea was to read books, mostly nonfiction, um, about that cover like more controversial topics. And um at first we thought maybe we'll just do it the two of us, and then we were like, well, it could be cool to make it a bigger group thing, and we know we have some women in our lives who would be great to talk to because we've always had good conversations together. And so it kind of went out from there. I think we sent a text to you all and said, hey, here's what we're thinking. If you want to be a part of this, let us know. And we can get it started. And so it kind of just went from there. So the idea was that we would be able to have these conversations based around a book. So we have kind of this um, starting point of information that we've been given, and then we can use that as like our anchor in the conversation. So it's not just opinion, 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 opinion. It's like, okay, well, in the book it said this, and this is how I felt about it. And then we also ended up adding supplemental things, like we used to send each other, like, I mean, we still do sometimes, but like podcast episodes and articles that like go along with the topic and maybe share different points of view on the topic or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would say like it's done Marco Polo. So we all used to live together like 5 years ago, 6 years ago in the same community, but we haven't for the 4 years we've been doing the book club. So it's virtual. We do it on Marco Polo. And there's been about 10 people. I would say like 8 to 10 people every month. Is that accurate?
Yeah, technically there are 10 people in the book club, but not everybody participates every month. So, and I don't think that we would add more than 10. And it's just, especially over Marco Polo, just because when the conversation gets going, it can be a lot to catch up on for people. So, um, so yeah, I
And then I
think
think
10 is good.
yeah, and we used to do one every month, but now it's like we take December off. And did we take July off too?
Yes. Yeah, we found that the summer gets crazy for people just traveling and everything. So yeah, I think we've done that the past two. I think the first year we did every single month, and then I don't know. Yeah, but now at least for the past 2 years we've taken off July and December. So
And then anyone can do like I've probably read 65, 70% of the books over the course of 4 years. And
yeah.
I'd say that's probably pretty similar for most people in the group.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, yeah, there's not a lot of pressure to like perform in the book club. Like,
No, but let's talk about the rules because there are very clear rules in this book
yes.
club.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. So when we started the book club, Phoebe and I we just wanted to be very intentional and very conscious about making it the type of book club where everybody felt comfortable to share their opinions, even if they didn't line up with everybody else. And so we did have a list of rules, and I think some of the rules we haven't stuck to. Like, we did want everybody to be participating, um, that kind of thing. I think one of the most important rules we had was kind of what happens in book club stays in book club. Like, we needed everybody to know it's okay to speak your mind, and we're not going to go like tell everybody what you said. So I feel like that was a really important rule.
And we're discussing topics like deep topics. Like we're talking
Yeah,
politics, we're talking LGBTQ, we're talking polygamy, we're talking, I mean, I don't know if there's any uncomfortable topic that we haven't covered at this point in four
yeah,
years, as well
yeah.
as other fascinating ones about how we think, or I
Mhm.
don't, yeah, anyway, we just have covered some really tough stuff. So that's why
Mhm.
that we're not just discussing like literature. It's
Yeah.
having like we're wrestling through things and often changing our perspective through that process.
Yes. Yeah. And so it needs to be the kind of space where you're allowed to like sort through and change your opinion and come to different conclusions if you want to, or yeah, without any fear of being made fun of or looked down on or anything like that. But um which I feel like we've been good at doing. I feel like we've had just very, very respectful conversations. And I think it does come down to, I would say a really important thing is that all of us already had relationships with each other. When we very first started the book club, we did invite people, like Phoebe and I both had our sisters in the book club, and it didn't work. Like, our sisters
Not
didn't.
because we didn't like them, they just did not
Yeah,
feel comfortable in that situation.
yeah, because they didn't have established relationships with all of us. So I feel like that's a really important part of a book club where you're diving this deep, is to make sure that you're like, we didn't have surface level relationships to begin with. We already had a connection with each other. And so that helps with the respect portion, I think. It's a lot easier to be disrespectful or not understand somebody that you don't know that well. So, and then not like all of us knew each other like extremely, extremely well, but we already had a level of respect and trust in each other when we started the book club.
Yeah, and I don't know if like there was behind the scenes problems from you, but like I would say I think also you just understand, like so much of our opinion is based on our life experience. And so when
Mhm.
we knew others' life experience to some extent and we're having these conversations, it helps understand where people are starting and where we're going and coming from. So it's not even respect, but just I would say a greater understanding of how people are getting to where they're getting to.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
And also like, okay, so let's keep going. So how do you pick books that people want to read?
Yeah, so the first couple years, Phoebe and I just picked books that we wanted to read and just dragged you along with us.
And I loved it. You picked excellent ones.
Because I think it wasn't to be like, oh, we know the best books and you guys just will figure it out with us. But it was more like there's so many books out there and there's so many topics. And we wanted to establish kind of a baseline for what this book club looks like and what how we wanted it to feel and what kind of topics we wanted to cover and address. And I feel like that really helped everybody understand like exactly what we were doing here. Like what was the point of this? And so now the past couple years, I've had everybody kind of submit books that they've heard of or seen of throughout the year that they think would be really good for our book club. And then this past year we voted on them, so, and that was helpful. So I feel like it's evolved over time just as everybody has really like grasped the concept of what we're doing. And I'm sure that there's plenty of books that not everybody's been interested in. I think that's happened a lot of times. And but there have been a lot of times where people were like, I didn't think that I cared for this book. And then it ended up being one of the favorite books of the year. Or, you know, so you do have to have kind of an open mind. But I also feel like that's very similar to any type of book club, whether you're doing a deep dive book club like this or just like a fun book club. Not everybody's going to be interested in every book. So,
Yeah, I kind of feel
uh,
like we have to pick the book for the book's sake and not based on people's opinions of what
yeah.
they want.
Right. Well, and so me, I'm like kind of a people pleaser. I'm like trying to not be, you know, but I naturally would want to take it personally if people don't like the book that's chosen. But I've realized that actually part of the deep dive process is being okay with not liking it. Like that's okay if you don't like it, actually. That's part of the critical thinking about what we're reading is getting to decide like actually I don't jive with this book and I don't agree with it, and that's okay too. We're not reading these books to like have a complete mind change every time and be like, okay, that book was 100% correct and now I agree with everything they say. It's so that we can hear from this perspective and then arrive at some conclusion, whether it's I do really like what they're saying and I've changed my mind to align more with them, or like I get what they're saying, but it's still not really for me. Like both are valid conclusions to
Or
come
even
to.
just like my opinion didn't change, but I have more empathy or compassion or understanding of where
Yes.
people are coming from. And I would say that's often been the case. I just have more empathy for people,
Mm-hmm.
understanding perspective.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like just gaining understanding.
Well, and also I think I've become way less opinionated through this book club.
Yeah.
Recognizing like so much of it is just opinions. Like it doesn't matter so much. There's so many ways to solve problems. There's so many ways to think about things. There's so many ways like about many of the topics, not all of them, but about many of them. And so it's just healthy exposure outside of yourself as well. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because growth comes from discomfort. right? And so a lot of times these books make us uncomfortable, but we have grown so much because we've been able to put ourselves in those situations and gain that empathy and understanding for these different points of view or different lives. And that's the main point of the book club.
Yeah, and I would say like as a participant at first, and sometimes this will happen, I start a book and I'm like, oh my gosh, like white knuckling, afraid of what we're going to
Yeah,
uncover in the pages. At first I was like, is this going to be the next expose? What's going to happen? Is my world going to be changed forever?
yeah,
And I would say the thing that I would say the glue that holds us together is that while we all have different experiences with faith, we are united and respectful in I would say the desire to believe in God and have hope that there's, in Christianity in general. And so I would say that every topic that we've covered has strengthened my faith because a lot of these things it's hard to like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like religion has played a part. And I don't know that I could be so open and vulnerable with another group of people who didn't also share this foundational respect and focus of integrating things into my faith and finding truth in all areas, as opposed to trying to like totally dismantle or blow up any level of faith that I have, because that's so foundation to my life. And I'd say most of ours in the group, not everyone.
yeah, that definitely helps that we all kind of have the same spiritual foundation. And I think that's been true for most, if not all of us, that, yeah, we've been able to relate most books to kind of our spiritual views on everything. And it has been strengthening in that way. I don't know that every book club that does this would come to those conclusions, but it's just kind of the way that we have like our group vibes together, and that's been a really cool thing to see. I think just because not every topic that we read about is spiritual in nature, like most of them are not. So
Almost
but
none of
yeah.
them have been actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, we have like at least one a year that kind of delves into spiritual things. I think our November book this year is so
Oh,
but
that's true. Yeah, I haven't got that one
I know I'm getting it tomorrow.
yet. Yeah, and I would say, okay, is there ever a time we've gone too deep with a book and had to backpedal?
Um, I don't, well, we did cancel that one book that you and I both
Oh
started.
yeah, that's right.
And
Okay, yes.
this might be too much. And it wasn't,
We don't have to name the specific book, but let's go through the
yeah,
process of what happened because I think that's helpful.
I think we both started it and it was uncomfortable. So we had a phone call to talk about it because obviously we want to be okay with being uncomfortable, but like, where do you draw the line? And I feel like we just decided that this particular book was not going to lead to like beneficial conversations and
Well, and
was
the other
not,
thing is I reached out to some professors that were experts in this
yeah,
area from when I was in college, and they very quickly just dismantled the arguments in the book and kind of was like, this is baloney in a nicer way. They were more academic about it.
yeah. So it didn't feel worthwhile. So we did end up not doing that book. But I think we found like the resources that your professors gave you and stuff. And we did read through some other things like that and still were able to have a conversation. But that's only time that's happened, I think.
Yeah, I think a few times, like I remember being the first one to read a book, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot of explicit things in here. And so, like, whoever's reading sometimes will be like, whoever reads first is like, oh, lots of this or lots of that's in the book.
You know,
You
just so
adjust.
you know.
Yeah, adjust your reading accordingly. And so sometimes you got these trailblazers who will
Yeah,
cut off
I
the meat.
know. Yeah, usually I'm okay with being the first one to read it, but I'm not always. I don't
Yeah.
always have the book right away. So I
But
was
I
still
think there's just like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, you're fine. I just, since like being in charge of the book club, if I haven't like finished it or if I haven't started it before somebody else and then they start saying stuff about it, I'm like, oh no, I have this like responsibility.
But I think
So
like at this point, we've all just accepted this is just part, like you said, this is part of the process.
yeah.
And it's okay. Like it's okay for us to learn how to navigate it. And I would say, especially because these are skills that I have developed since starting this book club. I didn't have skills to navigate these topics, to read different books, to think critically in the same way that I do now. And it's very much what I want my family culture to be like. These are skills I much want my children to have. And so
Hmm.
it's helpful to like you have to mess up to learn, right?
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, and with the family culture and everything, I think that's so true. And it, like, one of the biggest things for me is reading these books that maybe don't necessarily align with how I see the world or how, like, what I value, and being okay with reading that, because I feel like in our society these days, we just end up in these echo chambers of like people just saying exactly what we want to hear, and we refuse to like go outside of that. And we lose so much by doing that, by like getting comfortable with putting yourself out there and putting yourself in a situation where you can learn from somebody who sees the world completely differently than you, and then learning how to critically think about that and how to take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't. Like, that's so, so important. That's something that I really want my kids to understand about life and how they go about the world and with people that they meet and all of that.
Well, and I would say too, like this has equipped me in my own life in so many ways. Like I had no idea how many times we'd cover a topic, and then all of a sudden it like came up in my family or extended family or in my community, and I all of a sudden felt equipped. Like we had not only read the book, but we'd had elaborate discussions, and we'd gone through down all of these rabbit holes and how to address it and how to talk about it. And so I was ready to handle things in my life that I didn't know I would need to handle.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And yeah, it does make me feel more confident going about these conversations and stuff, but I'm also more confident in being like, like I don't think that's true, but let me like get back to you. And I'm just more confident in I know where to find the information now, and then be able to have the conversations. Um but yeah, it's so, so helpful in a lot of ways.
Something else I wanted to mention about picking the books is at first, I mean, you were picking them, but I would say like 4 years in now, we're pretty good every year of like, okay, we read a book a lot about the right political, right side of political
Mhm.
philosophy. Let's read about the left side now. Or we read about, a memoir from a transgender perspective. Let's read about the opposite side of that. And, I think you've done a really good job at curating not just like totally outlandish perspectives on one side, but we're trying to get balanced views on many, many topics or at least
Mhm.
multiple perspectives on many topics over the course of years now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been really cool because I feel like on both sides of, like you said, the transgender, I feel like we found things on both sides that like really resonated and that we totally, could understand or have empathy for. Like on either side, it wasn't like we read one book and then read the other and we're like, oh, that other book is terrible. It was like, okay, no, this is so good to have both perspectives and to understand where these people are coming from, and just have more like love and empathy, but also like how are we going to handle it in our lives anyway, just all the different things. But
Yeah, and I think, you know, I don't think we walk away with the same conclusions. I don't think we have the same opinions at the end of it. And
mhm,
some things are going to be more relevant to our lives than others. And so sometimes it really is a thought exercise of finding truth and what is true and what's not true.
mhm,
And just kind of being, like you said, comfortable with it being uncomfortable, which is really helpful.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so what, okay, let's cover a few more great questions here that we haven't organically addressed yet, which is when you what do you do when you feel defensive or worry about sharing because of different backgrounds or beliefs within the group? How do you handle that?
Oh, it's tricky because yeah, I feel like I don't get too worried about sharing, but then afterward I do get worried about of like responses. I feel like I found in our group though that usually um my worries are unfounded. I think most people are just yeah, the same, but I think that comes down to the trust again that's been established in the group is that it's okay to share. I mean, I feel like we have some people who are very comfortable with being like, well, like, let me, share the other side of what you're saying, or let me play devil's advocate a little bit and just and that's a good thing. It can be like, what do you mean? Why aren't you immediately agreeing with me? But it always ends up being really good. Like, okay, I see. I see what you're saying, but it is a skill that you have to learn and again just get comfortable with, because I feel at the beginning it was a lot harder than it is now. So it's interesting to think back to the beginning of everything. Um because yeah, I feel like it just has been strengthened over time, just the idea that we can share without fear of people being upset or judging or any of that. So I would say, I think honestly, like, just share what you think, your opinions, and then hopefully the group will be kind based on the rules and the tone that you've already established.
Well, and we read a really good book, maybe 3 years in, Think Again by
Mm-hmm.
Adam Grant. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like if you're going to start this, that's the book to start with.
Yeah.
Because it really helps set up. I mean, we had been going for a few years, but it was just so eye-opening at how much we think we ourselves are authorities, even when we have no legs to stand on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and just learning how to have just kind of a more flexible mind and willing to see things the other way. And yeah, that book was so beneficial. I would agree. That would be a great one to start with if you were going to start your own deep dive book club, just to get everybody on the same page. Because there's not a lot in that book you could argue with. Like, you can't be like, no, he didn't get this right. Like, everybody, I feel like, would arrive at the same page if you started with that one.
Well, and I
So
think it's a good filter. Like, if they don't enjoy this idea of Think Again in the book, then they're not a good candidate for the deep dive book club.
that's
Because
so
you
true.
have, that's like what the book club is thinking again.
Yeah, that's your test right there.
Yeah. And I think the other one that would be a second one of like a good test is The Coddling of the American Mind.
Hmm.
It does have a lot to talk about, but it's talking about how we think and respond to those thoughts as a
Hmm.
society at large. And so it's another one that just kind of helps you raise your level of self-awareness.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely been a favorite over the years, I think. Just those ideas were very applicable.
But
So,
also there's way more controversy in it than Think Again. Think Again is just a really
yeah.
good, clean guidebook.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, the coddling of the American mind, there's a lot more room for people to kind of take offense, I think, to the ideas that are being shared. But
Yes.
yeah, think again, you're good to go.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What are some of the best books? We've already starting to reveal some. What are some of the best books we've read?
Oh, I mean, that's a matter of opinion. I feel like we've had so many good ones. I think one of our favorites from like way back in the first year, I remember everybody really loving The Dance of the Dissident Daughter. That was a more spiritual one.
I didn't
And
read that one.
you didn't read that one? You got to go back and read that. It's
Okay.
so good. Just about, yeah, just women and spirituality and um yeah, anyway, that was so good. One of my all-time favorites was How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. He did an amazing job. And you, living in the South, got to go do some really cool tours and stuff right after reading that. I was so jealous, but
Yeah, that was
that's
like one of my favorites because it became alive. And it was one of those situations where what I was doing for myself totally made my family's life so much better. And we went to
Mhm.
all these plantations and tours of slaves' homes. Like it was fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, that book I just recommend to everybody. I think that is so, so amazing. I love what he did with that.
I
Coddling of
literally
the
just recommended it like
You
homeschool
did?
yesterday. Yeah, yesterday
Oh,
we were
perfect.
talking about that book. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I had a friend asking me, what should we read with our book club? I was like, The Coddling of the American Mind. No, not the coddling of
How the
How
word
the
was
Word is
passed.
Passed. How the
Yeah.
Word is Passed. Um, Other good ones.
Braiding Sweetgrass. It's not
Great
controversial, but it gives you
Sweetgrass.
a lot to think about. It was lovely.
Yes. Yeah, I ended up buying that one just to have because it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. Um, I loved, I'm trying to think, what have we read this year that we've loved?
Okay, 2024. Okay, we read Hidden Potential this year.
Mm-hmm.
War Without End. That one was actually really fascinating.
Yeah, we wanted to learn more about the Israel-Palestine conflict. So that, yeah, that was a
And like
really
the
good one.
whole history of it. It goes back to the very beginning. It was fascinating. The
Yeah.
Art of Gathering. That was a great one.
Yes, we did love The Art of Gathering. It was so good.
And
That's, yeah,
also,
that's,
I was saying that's a good one. Like if you as a host are starting to feel stressed, or you as a host feels like, well, I have to invite everyone. This is a great book that will tell you, no, you absolutely do not.
that's true. Yeah, The Art of Gathering can teach you how to host the book club, and then you can read Think Again as your first book club book. Yeah.
Oh, 24/6, The Power of Unplugging 1 Week a Day.
Yeah,
That one was really good.
that was good.
Oh, we read The Sun Does Shine, How I Found Life and Freedom on Death Row. That was fantastic.
Yes, that yeah, that's one of my favorite memoirs I've ever read. So good. Anthony Ray Hinton is just an angel.
My,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about it again. Farewell to
Oh,
Manzanar was really good.
yeah, about the internment camps here in the US.
And then maybe you should talk to someone. We just read in October.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a
That
good
was
one.
so good. So that was this year's books, but when we have, there's a long list of amazing books that we've read.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Well, there's so many.
Everyone's going to ask. That's going to be, what books are they? Let's just quick tell them.
I know. Okay, we will.
All right, I'm pulling at 2023. We read, okay, Coddling of American Mind. I'm skipping the ones that we skipped, so you don't need to worry about that.
So
Did we read, I didn't read this one, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage.
You know what? I think I didn't finish that one, but the girls who did read it loved it. They thought it
Okay.
was really, really good. Yeah.
And then Scarlet A, I didn't read that one.
That one was good. That's yeah, just about kind of um the more intricacies of the abortion conversation rather than it just being black and white, like just let's look at all of the issues here surrounding the yeah, it was really good. But
And then we read What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing. That was one of my favorites. It was
yeah,
fascinating.
that was fascinating. Yeah.
And the audiobook was so great because there was the reading of the book, but then there were conversations between the two authors. And
Hmm.
yeah, it was mind-blowing. How I Killed Pluto and Why It Had It Coming.
Oh yeah, that was just a fun, yeah, kind of a fun one. It
Yeah.
was really interesting to hear the behind the scenes of the astronomy field in general, but yeah.
So you can see, I guess I won't keep going through all of them, but you kind of get the idea. Like we're covering very broad, lots of different topics. One was the Persuaders. Oh, this one was interesting. The Persuaders at the front lines for the fight of hearts, minds, and democracy.
Hmm. Yeah, just kind of like how do you get people on your side kind of a thing.
And
Yeah.
also what's actually happening on social media. And like it was kind of reporting on the realities of our online world, which,
Mhm.
spoiler alert, you'll trust less things you see online after reading.
I know. I know. I was just telling my mom because I feel like the older generation is having a harder time sorting through social media. But I was like, Mom, like 80% of what you see on social media is fake. So just keep that in mind.
Assume that it's the 80%.
Yeah, just assume it's probably fake. Don't share it.
Also, we read Cass, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson.
Yes, yeah. That was cool. I felt like how I loved how she weaved together like the Nazi movement in Germany and the caste system in India and then what happened in our country with slavery and all of that. I just thought it was really, really well done.
Yeah. So I can make a list on all of the other books we've read, but you can see it's a wide variety and not every one is going to be great for every group. And I don't know that these are like, I mean, these are some of our favorites. I don't think these are the books you should read to have a successful book club necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, probably just pick topics that you guys are interested in delving more into to begin with. Like that's kind of how I feel Phoebe and I did the first couple years. So yeah, it probably just depends on you and your group. There's so many books out there too that you can't really go wrong.
Yeah, and maybe your thing isn't discussing some of these crazy topics. Maybe you want to focus more on parenting, or you want to focus more on marriage, or you want, any of these things. But I think the principles of choosing, like being selective with who's going to be in your group, creating some rules so that people know what to expect, and I don't know, what else would you say are like necessary principles for a successful book club?
Um, it's a good question. I feel like, yeah, the ones you said were good, but yeah, just the rules are important of just how you plan on interacting with each other. Um, and then, yeah, just how, I mean, be selective about your group and about the books that you pick. I think be intentional. Um,
Let's talk a
but
little bit more for just a minute about that, because I think if you haven't read the art or like if you haven't wrestled through that, that's a really hard thing to say. So
mhm.
why is that? Why is being selective good? And what are your selective, I don't know, what are you filtering for?
Um, when it comes to people, you want to pick a group that is ever like they're all going to be invested in the end goal. And I think that does take some like-mindedness. I think it's fine if everybody's from different backgrounds and have different opinions on different things. But you do, I think, kind of have to have a similar value system and know that you're going to be, yeah, just in this together to achieve something. Because, yeah, like I said, when we first started and we had, family members in or whatever, it just wasn't jiving as well because they didn't align with the rest of us and like maybe our situations in life or just our backgrounds of and our foundation together, that kind of thing. So I feel like it made the conversations feel a little more disjointed or a little more unsafe because these some of the people in the group didn't really understand what was going on and how to like interact together. So if you're picking a group to have these type of conversations with, I think you need to make sure that the people are genuinely invested and have a desire to learn and grow with you on the journey. And it's going to be more beneficial for everybody if you're selective like that because people will be able to be more open. And so it might feel kind of mean to leave somebody out because it always does. If you're a nice person, right? It doesn't feel good to leave people out. But if your goal is to have a certain experience, then you need to be more selective. And she talks about that in The Art of Gathering, which, yeah, you should definitely read if you're going to host your own party or book club or whatever it is. But
And I will say too, like, I don't think we like kicked your sister out, or
no, they
they
left on
they
their
just
own.
left on their own. Yeah, like
Uh,
they didn't have a
They
good
knew.
experience. Like even though they were
Yeah.
totally welcome and they could have stayed, and I would have thought that was lovely because I loved the insights that they had, they didn't
Yeah.
enjoy it. And so I think
Yeah.
that's another like piece of the puzzle as you're trying to filter through who, just know like it's okay. Like it might not be a good fit. You might have think you curated a great group and some people didn't enjoy it. And so it wasn't a good fit, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, I don't know if I have more to add on that really. I mean, yeah, with picking the books, it's kind of the same thing. Like, um is this going to add to the experience that we want to have? Like with that book that we ended up just saying, nope, like let's not read this. It's because it just wasn't going to add value to the experience that we were trying to create with this book club. So it just wasn't worth our time. And so yeah, so same thing with books. It's just I do a lot of research. I mean, I do have people vote now, but I do look into the books and like, could we actually have conversations about this, or is it going to be just kind of a one note thing, or like how many layers are there to this? So there's some work in that as
So how do you
well.
do that? Is that just going to Amazon and reading like summaries? Or are you looking at blogs? How do you find those books?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. I mean, especially, yeah, with books that I choose, sometimes since we've already read so many books, I'll think of like a topic that I want to dive into, and then I'll search like books on this topic. Like that's what I had to do with the Israel Palestine one. What was that one called? Um yeah, I was looking like, okay, we want to learn about Israel and Palestine. Like, what are some good books? And then, yeah, I was reading reviews and blog posts and all of that before I settled on that one, which it was dense, but but
It was
it
also
was,
like a balanced perspective. It wasn't
yeah,
attacking one side or the other. It felt, I mean, everybody has an agenda, but it felt more neutral than some
yeah.
options.
That's why I ended up picking it, was because I was like, okay, this one seems like it's just sharing the facts, and then we can kind of go from there. So. Um, and then yeah, with other books, similar thing, just look for um yeah, reviews and blogs and all of it. But yeah.
So I think you said something that was really key, which is you have to decide if this is adding to the experience that you want to have. And so we started this way, like we started talking about where this group came from, but can you just like clearly tell us like what was the point of the group? What is the experience that we want to be having?
I think the point of the group was to create a more neutral, safer scenario where we could tackle topics that are harder to have conversations about out in the real world, and give us a way to discuss those things and to learn and to grow, rather than ending up in echo chambers, or in a situation where you're just getting yelled at about what your opinion should be. And just create, yeah, just a space where we can wrestle through the topics and figure out where we land. And like, we don't have to all come to the same conclusion, and that's fine, but it's so nice to have people to talk to and bounce ideas off of, and ask questions, and just have that space to figure it out. And then, like you said, when you're out in the real world having conversations with family or friends, or at the park or family dinners or whatever, you have been there. And so you know where you stand, and you know why, because you have had that time to really get the information and think through it. And so it's not just a tossing around of opinions. It's like, this is my opinion, but this is why, because I've had this experience.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing, like a byproduct of this, is that because been given a space to talk through things and be wrong or talk through things I don't understand, I feel like when my kids come to me now with things that maybe would scare me, I realize, no, 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 they just need a space to talk through this too. And so instead of shutting them down and being like, well, that's different than what we believe, or this is different than how we think, or this is different than, our core foundation of what makes us Jacksons, or, or things
Mhm.
that are so important to me, like I think are just so, they're really near and dear to my heart. When those things are brought up, instead of getting defensive and attacking, I realize, no, they just need the opportunity to talk through this. They need to
Mhm.
be able to think through it. They need to be able to wrestle. And I
Mhm.
don't know that I would say that is not innate in our culture at all.
No. Yeah, it's definitely a learned skill. And how great for our kids to learn it so early in life. Like, that is, it's not as great to have to learn that when you're in your 30s. Like, it would be nice to be able to sort through things as you go along, and not, later in adulthood. But yeah.
I don't know about you, Madeline, but I feel like we just like blew the cover on this group, and I'm feeling more vulnerable about this episode than I maybe have any other.
Yeah. It's so good though. It's so good. And I think everybody should do it in their own way with their own people. And Because there's definitely people out there for you. You might think like, oh, I don't know who I would do this with. Like, even if it's just one person, I think you could still have a really, really good experience.
Yeah, and I think you can cast a wide net because we've been doing this in Marco Polo. Like it doesn't even have to be someone really in your vicinity.
I know. Yeah, it would be fun to be able to do it in person. I always think we need to figure out how to plan like a trip where all of us get together and
What
just
if we did an in-person planning session?
yeah, that would be awesome. Just like every once a year. Just
It'd be
everybody find their
so
way together, but it would be so fun. So I would love that. But yeah, you don't have to be next to each other. Marco Polo has really worked great for us because it is something you can do in your own time whenever you have a minute, rather than having to make everybody's schedules work and stuff like that. But it would also be so fun to be able to sit together and chat as well. So
Although I will
one
say
thing
that,
I do, oh, go ahead.
no, go for it. It might be the same thing. You take it away.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I do kind of like that Marco Polo lets us talk as we go along. Like as we at the beginning of the book, like, well, this is like my initial thoughts hearing this, and then yeah, just seeing how it changes throughout the month. But
It's true because so much change happened. Like with meeting one night, you're like, oh, that's nice. But so much can marinate and change over the course of 30 days as we're thinking about it.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so cool to see the thought process everybody goes through. Whereas if you're just meeting like at the end of the month after reading a book, then you've already come to your conclusions. So you can still talk about the book, but it's not quite as organic, I think. So
Yeah. Okay, let's really quick. This isn't quick at all. This is like the longest episode in forever. But this is also really important. When we're hosting, how do you like have those discussions? How do you like be a
yeah, I don't know. I don't always feel like I'm the best host. I do feel like some of you do a better job than me. But if
you did it
I'm
for 3
host
years with great success, Madeline. I don't know what you're talking about.
well, the way I do it, because I'm just reading the book at the same time as you are. So as I'm reading, will think of questions that I want to discuss with you, and then I'll just pop on Marco Polo and say that question like from that chapter, and then see what everybody says. But you're like still reading. So that's kind of how I've been doing it. We always start every month by kind of where does everybody already stand on this topic, which I do like starting out that month with like, okay, you haven't even started the book yet, but where are you at with this particular thing? And then I think that's kind of cool because then as the book goes along, you can see people changing and learning, and yeah, that's great. But
Well, and I would say no one. It's so varied. Like if we have 10 people there, it's 10 different starting places.
mhm. Yeah, it's true. And so it's really cool. But yeah, since we started letting other people pick books, we've started letting other people host too. And I've kind of just been like, if you picked this book, you can host it. Or sometimes it's a book that you didn't pick, but you want to host that month. So that's kind of how it's gone.
And some books just lend themselves, like everybody's asking questions. And so
Yeah.
sometimes the host barely has to do any
Yeah.
hosting and the conversation just flows.
Yeah, which is fine. Yeah, I feel like as a host, especially on Marco Polo, my job is kind of like, has there been a lull in the conversation? Is there a reason that we're not chatting about this book anymore? And maybe I can like bring up another question or something like that. Because a lot of times organically, just questions from everybody come up. So
Okay, so how do you handle, because some months are so chatty and then some it's less. Like I would say this year it's been a little bit more of a lull in a lot of the
yeah,
conversations. So how do you navigate that?
I mean, it's tricky because it is Marco Polo and we are all over the country. And so I just kind of assume that everybody has life happening to them. and, and it's okay if we're not constantly talking, but I do I do like, I mean, it's kind of up to you, the people who are in the book club too. Like um up to them to have their own experience. I'm not in charge of anybody else's experience except my own. So, if people aren't hopping on to chat or to read or whatever, that's got nothing to do with me. And bummer for you if you're too busy. I'm just kidding. But
No,
it's
I think it's so helpful to have someone say that out loud though, right? Because you're
yeah.
starting something, you're feeling vulnerable, and then if if it doesn't take off, it can feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, it totally can. So, but yeah, I think you just have to give everybody grace that, it's just life goes on and we're all moms of little kids and we're just doing our best. And
And
sometimes we
bigger
have the
kids, which
capacity.
means it's busier. Like,
I know that, yeah, it's true. So sometimes we have the capacity to have longer conversations and talk a lot more. And then sometimes it's just checking in once or twice a month. Um, but I think everybody still loves the book club and enjoys it when they do put the time and effort into it. And so that's what matters.
okay, here's one other practical thing, which is we started a separate thread, like Marco Polo thread, for any non-book relevant conversations because oftentimes someone would mention something in passing and then it's like, whoa, we want to hear a life update about that, but we don't want to derail the poor people because to spend hours on the life update in the book group. So we do have multiple threads just to manage like actually being friends versus having book conversation.
Yes, which I have really liked that because that does help us not go off the rails with the book club. So that's nice because, of course, we want to keep up with each other's lives. So yeah, we just separate it. But
Yeah, and then
it's good.
another time, like if you get on Marco Polo, and especially if you don't have Plus where you can go 2 times speed, you can see like, okay, it was a busy day. There's 40 messages. What I'm gonna do, what am I gonna do? So then a lot of
Yeah.
times, like you'll just listen to the last, either you'll just take forever catching up or listen to the last few and jump back into the conversation.
Yeah, which is also totally fine. I know. I like that Marco Polo has made it so you can like close the app and still be listening because then it's kind of like a podcast. I'm like walking around cleaning my house and just listening to everybody's messages. But yeah, sometimes you just have to skip it and just join in when at the end, but it's good.
Okay. Well, we spent a whole hour talking about deep diving into the deep dive book club. Is
I
there
know. I feel
anything,
like I could talk about it forever.
I know, is there anything that we've missed or you want to make sure to like bring up or share last tips?
Um, it's a good question. I don't know. Practical tips. I think we talked about maybe learn about how to gather people with the art of gathering. Think Again is a great first book. We do kind of a year in review slash where do we want to go next year meeting at the beginning of December usually before life gets crazy with the holiday. But and that's been really helpful. So I'll usually send out an email probably asking everybody to give me their book recommendations and all of that. And then I think last year I did like a Google form or something people could vote. And it was pretty easy. So those are practical things. Then I'm not always good at it, but I try to give reminders of what next month's book is, like at least a week in advance so people have time to track it down.
That has
Um,
been life-changing. Thank you.
Okay. Sometimes I completely forget. I feel like, yeah. But I do try my best. And it's helpful for me too, because yeah, sometimes there's a hold at the library or whatever. And yeah, I think one thing that is really fun is to remember you can share like supplemental resources every month. That's always fun with podcasts and articles and
Well, especially
but
because so many authors have episodes, like podcast episodes.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
some months that really is all people have time for is a 30, 60 minute
Yeah.
podcast episode, but it still allows you to be really part of the conversation.
Exactly. So, yeah, you can be flexible and still get the job done. So, I think just knowing all these things, listening to this conversation, and just, if you're thinking, I couldn't do this, you need to think again about how you can make it work for you.
Well, that's a great note to end on. I love that. Well, Madeline, thank you so much for coming and just, I don't know, making this accessible. It's something where I don't know, when you have something so good, you just want to share it with everybody. And this has been one of the elements of my adult life is having this group for 4 years that has become like a spot to really, I think the term safe space is overused, but I think the idea is just like it's a spot where you can go and you can change your thoughts and not be attacked for it. That's really nice.
It's really nice. It's a very, very special thing. And yeah, I'm really grateful for it.
All right. Well, I hope that you all have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you next week. And I'm sure at some point we'll find an excuse to bring Madeline back on the show because we always do.
Please do. I love it.
Where you are planted, watch the blossoms grow.